Hi, welcome back to A Moment with Marta. So, as you recall, last week I talked about high functioning autism. This week I want to talk about moderate to severe autism. So, I've entitled this, Does Severe Autism Equal Intellectual Disability? Not necessarily. So, a lot of times, people that are on the severe end of the spectrum, whether they're nonverbal or they're more limited verbally, people assume that they're not able to understand things at an intellectual level as well. So it's the tendency to talk down to people that aren't able to communicate verbally, maybe that are more limited verbally. It's also easy to talk about them while they're there in the room. As parents, as caregivers, teachers, therapists, it can be really easy to discuss educational plans, that kind of thing, goals, regardless of how old the child is. The child could be 16 years old and is talked about while they're right there in the room. And it's not even necessarily disparaging things, but how many of us like to be talked about as if we're not there? I don't think any of us do. And I kind of referred to that in the dignity and respect video, but this kind of goes along with all of that. People with moderate to severe autism understand way more than people give them credit for. Carly Fleischman is a really amazing, strong self-autism advocate. She is nonverbal. She is a young adult. She wrote a book with her father that was about the story of her life. He wrote the first half kind of talking about her early childhood leading up to when she was able to start communicating with the computer. And now she is one of the world's leading advocates. She communicates using tablets. She hosts her own talk show. She's a really incredibly strong, bright young lady. And a lot of times when she was younger, she was thought to not understand what was going on. And years later, she would start to talk about, on her device, she would start to talk about the things that she'd been learning in history lessons or in some other classroom setting that her teachers and caregivers and parents had no clue that she was actually taking in. She's incredibly bright. So it's really easy as people, as a culture, to think that if somebody is unable to verbally communicate, that they're not able to understand. And I want you to imagine that you are in your head, okay? Imagine you're sitting in a classroom and you need to go to the bathroom. You're nonverbal. You know the rule is that you have to ask permission from the teacher before you can get up and go to the bathroom. Imagine what you would do. How would you indicate that you needed to go to the bathroom? You know that this is a need. You intellectually understand what the rules are even. Maybe you would try sign language. There's a lot of people that will use sign language. That's an option. What if the teacher doesn't recognize the sign language? What if he or she doesn't understand what you're trying to indicate? What do? Maybe you draw a picture of a toilet. Maybe you raise your hand and point in the direction of where the bathroom is. Maybe you just get up and you try to lead your teacher where you're wanting to go. But imagine with those constraints, how frustrating that might be. Everything that we do is communication, whether it's being verbal about something, whether there's behaviors involved. So when you have a person that is moderate to severe on the spectrum and they have behaviors of some sort, they're communicating with you. They're communicating a need, they're communicating a want, they're communicating that something is uncomfortable for them or that something is wrong. And so when we are in their presence, it's up to us to be able to figure out what it is they're trying to tell us. And if we can kind of understand how their mind might think just a little bit differently, then we can help them not to get to that point where they're so frustrated. I mean, imagine being imprisoned inside your head. You know what you want to say, but you can't access the words that you want to say. Maybe you're able to recall certain words like all of us. Maybe you heard the teacher say, all of us are going to go to the park tomorrow. And you're trying to ask, when are we going? What time are we going? But you can't access those words. All you can come up with is all of us. And so you can imagine the confusion that would ensue. However, if you know the context of what the person is saying, then you can communicate with them and you can decipher what it is that they're needing, and you can prevent some frustrations before they get heightened, right? My son, when he was young, he was speaking in colors, and I remember there was one instance where he would say blue, red. And you know, if you don't know the routine, if you don't know the context, you have no clue what that means. I fortunately knew we were in the middle of a snack, and right after snack he would get his milk, and he always had a cup and he always had a straw. So in that particular instance, I knew he meant, I want a blue cup with a red straw, blue, red. But there were other times where he would list a color like orange, and I had no clue because I didn't know what the context was. He knew exactly what he was thinking. He knew exactly what he wanted. But as a society, if we can be more in tune with what people are trying to convey to us through their behaviors, through gestures, they're there, they're inside there, they're just trapped in their heads, and they're not able to access the words that they want to say when they want to say it. It does not necessarily mean they have an intellectual disability. Now, someone can be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder as well as an intellectual disability, but the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. And that's typically an assumption that can be made for someone that's on the lower functioning on the autism spectrum. My son is moderate to severe, and he is brilliant. He's hyperlexic, so he knew all of his letters by the time he was 18 months old. He was reading by the time he was 2 years old, and he can mimic and imitate anything that he hears, and is incredible with his inflection, with his tone, can match what he hears exactly, so that if you're not looking at him, you might think it's somebody else. He's that good. But what he does is he draws upon those things that he has access to in the moment to try to communicate with me. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows exactly what he needs, and he is incredibly smart. But he's just unable to access the language in that given moment in time to convey to me what it is that he's needing, what it is that he's wanting. And so people that are on that end of the spectrum, what they need is for people to see them as people, to see them as intelligent, to be empathetic to what it might be like to be trapped inside your head, how frustrating that might be. So once again, I thank you for tuning in to A Moment with Marta, and I'll be back next week. Talk to you later. Bye.